This is the Just for Real podcast, and I'm your host, Grant Ace, and I hope you can join me along for the ride for this podcast when I interview people and when I get to just have honest conversations about society, about the economy, about politics, and about religion even too, because, I really believe that we are endowed by our Creator with rights, because our rights do not come from a government. Our rights come from Almighty God. And so I really believe that, honestly, at the end of the day, that if we cannot have true communication with each other in this country and we only listen to vitriol and hate, we can no longer have a civil discussion with our fellow countrymen.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
I think you all know that I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Hi, I'm Grant Ace, and this is the Just for Real podcast. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be able to start interviewing people and start having honest conversations, because honestly, part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast was because so often I get to talk to so many different interesting people, and I don't get the time because of just like life and just busyness. I don't get the time to just sit down with someone and talk to them for an hour or so at a time. And so I made this podcast dedicated to that idea, to be able to have that conversation with whoever I want, and whoever I really want to communicate with, because I think it's important in this day in society, because we're at a crossroads where there's just a lot of hate and vitriol, and there's no communication at all between the different parties. And at the end of the day, it's sad too, because I really believe that good has been called evil, and evil has become good. And the problem with that is that it's not about Christianity becoming politicized. God did not change. Christianity did not change. Religion did not change. You know what changed? Politics. Politics became moral issues. And so it no longer is about, is the township going to pay for the road, or is a building going to be erected, and is the zone cleared for that, and did the township board approve it? No, that's not what politics is anymore. Politics now is about moral issues, and the problem is that we distance ourselves from our fellow countrymen, and we join in the vitriol and hate when we no longer have honest discussions, when we no longer communicate with each other. And so this is what this podcast is about. And granted, even though the huge problems and the huge issues of our society right now are important, they're also blinding ourselves and blinding us from seeing the other side and seeing the other person as a human being. And so part of this podcast and part of my heart in this is to honestly open up a discussion about just society at large. And so I'm going to be interviewing and talking to different people like politicians, entrepreneurs, businessmen, scientists, whoever I really want to connect with, because at the end of the day, I really believe that we can't understand society if we don't understand each other. And that could be anything. That could be any sector, and that could be any part of life. But I think that we need to understand that society is more than the big issues that are just polarizing this country and tearing this country apart. And so that's my heart in this, that whoever I talk to, which, granted, do I have my own political bias? Absolutely. Do other people have their own political bias? Absolutely. But the thing is that I believe as human beings and as people who are created by a God, created by Almighty God, that we have the responsibility and the duty to actually love each other and respect each other, to be able to communicate clearly about these issues. And not only these issues, but dive into issues that actually both sides can talk about and both sides want to solve. Like, for instance, like the problem with homelessness, both sides want a solution to that. The problem with our public transportation here in America is terrible. And so that's just like a little glimpse of what I really want to talk about in this podcast, because, obviously, like issues like abortion, immigration, and the economy, and so many other polarizing issues are important. But the thing is that if we do not sit down with each other and we don't have honest conversations about society at large and society as a whole, then we are just simply adding to the vitriol of hate, as I said, as RFK Jr. has said, and we no longer care about our fellow countrymen because we're more concerned about being right, and we're more concerned about identifying with our ideology. As soon as you identify as a Democrat, as soon as you identify as a Republican, you already lost. And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm a moderate, so this is how you should act. I'm not even a moderate. But the point that I'm trying to say is, if you identify as a personality with your political party, you've already lost. You have already lost your humanity. And so I hope that you can really hear my heart in this, and I hope that you can really understand where I'm coming from in this, because at the end of the day, I really believe that God has given us the ability to take our country back from just our pride and hate. And so I really hope that you will just join me on this journey when I get to interview these politicians and the people who will come on this podcast and the people who really care about America and really care about their fellow countrymen as well, and whatever they do, whether it be business, politics, science, whatever. And so that's my whole heart behind this, and I really hope that you can join me in this, because I think that we can have conversations that are not only, politically motivated and politically leaning, but this podcast isn't just about politics. It's also about just having a conversation and being able to see people as who they are and who they're created to be. Because if you're anything like me, and if you're a Christian like me, you believe that every single person, no matter what they've done, no matter what they've encountered in their life, are created by the Almighty God. And since I believe that, and since I know that to be true in my own life, because guess what? I'm not a perfect person, and I know that there's a lot more people who feel and know and understand that there's a God who wants us to be able to find unity and find him in the midst of this world and in the midst of this crazy world, honestly. And so I hope you can join me starting next week. Today is actually International Podcast Day, so it's kind of funny. I began this podcast today, September the 30th, by the way. And I hope that you can join me every single Friday, because every single Friday I'm going to have a new interview come out. And if it's not an interview, it's going to be an activity or at least an interaction with another person about just the honesty that we can have together as fellow countrymen and as people who are ultimately trying to do something that has a commonality in our goals. And that commonality in our goals is to make this country better, to heal this country, and to ask God for forgiveness and for him to heal our land.